Michael Scofield, a man whose mind is a weapon, a fortress, and a masterpiece all at once. To millions of viewers, he is the genius who orchestrated escapes that seemed impossible, who outwitted guards before they even realized a plan existed, who manipulated enemies with the precision of a surgeon and turned the walls of the most secure prisons into stages for his brilliance. Every move, every glance, every calculated risk felt like poetry in motion. He is a man who could turn chaos into order, fear into leverage, and impossibility into inevitability. But even legends are not perfect. Behind the flawless blueprints, the carefully inked tattoos, and the perfectly timed maneuvers, there existed moments when Michael's brilliance was shadowed by something more dangerous: hubris. That subtle overconfidence that whispers, "I can control this," can tip the balance in a world where even the smallest miscalculation can become fatal. Michael's genius is as inspiring as it is fragile. His confidence, audacity, and near-obsessive reliance on foresight made him unstoppable at times, but these same traits occasionally blinded him to variables he could not anticipate. A single misread expression, a moment of human unpredictability, or a seemingly insignificant distraction could unravel hours or even days of meticulous planning. And when that happened, the consequences were not merely setbacks, they were often catastrophic. What makes Michael Scofield so compelling is that he is not simply a mind operating in isolation. His intelligence is entwined with his humanity, his love for his brother Lincoln, his loyalty to friends, and his moral code all shape his choices. And yet, these very qualities, the empathy, the compassion, the emotional instincts, sometimes collide with his calculations, forcing him into compromises that even his genius cannot fully correct. In this video, we explore the biggest mistakes Michael Scofield ever made. We delve into the plans that faltered despite meticulous preparation, the allies he misjudged, the moments when overconfidence led him astray, and the rare lapses where emotion overcame logic. These are the moments that reveal the man behind the legend, the strategist whose mind could unlock any door, yet whose humanity occasionally made him vulnerable. From underestimated enemies who saw through his intentions, to overcomplicated plans that became fragile under pressure, from misplaced trust in those he cared for, to impulsive emotional decisions that jeopardized everything. Michael Scofield's mistakes are as instructive as his victories. They remind us that even the most brilliant minds are human, that hubris can undermine even the greatest strategy, and that genius is never immune to error. Prepare to see Michael Scofield, not just as the hero who outsmarted every obstacle, but as a man whose genius was sometimes shadowed by imperfection. This is a journey into the moments when brilliance met hubris, when strategy met unpredictability, and when the extraordinary mind of Michael Scofield faced the fragile limits of human judgment. Even the most brilliant minds are not immune to misjudging others, and Michael Scofield's first critical mistakes often stemmed from precisely this flaw: underestimating the cunning and unpredictability of his enemies. For all his meticulous planning, his hours of blueprints, calculations, and mental rehearsals, Michael sometimes assumed that those around him would operate within a predictable framework. He relied on patterns, probabilities, and logic, but people, as he would learn, do not always follow the rules. Take John Abruzzi, for example, a man forged by street survival and hardened by a lifetime of instinctual decision-making. Michael, confident in his ability to anticipate Abruzzi's moves, assumed that reason and circumstance would guide him predictably. Yet Hubris acted not by calculation alone, but by intuition, instinct, and the occasional unpredictability of raw human impulse. Each deviation from Michael's expectations forced him into rapid improvisation, highlighting the delicate vulnerability of even the most precise plans. Or consider Warden Pope, a man who wielded power quietly with discipline, cunning, and a rigid adherence to protocol. Michael, in his focus on immediate obstacles, occasionally overlooked Pope's ability to manipulate situations subtly, to leverage his authority in ways that were nearly invisible. These were not men of brute force alone. They were masters of psychological nuance, and even Michael's formidable intellect sometimes struggled to anticipate the small, almost imperceptible moves that could jeopardize his schemes. Hence, these moments reveal a fundamental truth about Michael's genius. While he could manipulate systems, anticipate movements, and design contingencies, he could not entirely predict human unpredictability. His reliance on calculated assumptions, while often his greatest strength, sometimes became a blind spot. One misplaced assumption, one underestimation, could unravel hours or even days of careful planning. Michael's encounters with these adversaries are lessons in humility. They remind us that genius is not infallible, that even the most carefully laid plans can falter when faced with the unpredictable nature of human behavior. The genius mind may foresee patterns, but it cannot fully control the chaos of another mind acting outside expectation. And yet, it is precisely these challenges that defined Michael Scofield. His mistakes in underestimating his enemies forced him to adapt, improvise, and evolve. They showed that even when brilliance meets chaos, resilience, creativity, and adaptability can still turn near failure into eventual success. But make no mistake, these moments were perilous, tense, and at times terrifying in their consequences. They remind us that in the high-stakes world Michael navigated, underestimating a single adversary could be the difference between freedom and disaster. One of the most consistent pitfalls in Michael Scofield's brilliance was something profoundly human: trust. Even a mind as precise and calculating as his could be vulnerable to betrayal, misjudgment, and the unpredictable currents of loyalty and emotion. For all his genius in designing escape routes, contingency plans, and tactical maneuvers, Michael's strategies often relied on people whose hearts, intentions, and decisions he could not always fully control. He placed faith in allies like Sarah Tancredi, whose compassion and courage he respected, and in his brother Lincoln, whose loyalty was unwavering. Even temporary partners, like Alexander Mahone, seemed to fit the roles Michael anticipated. But humans are not programmable machines, and their behavior often defies logic, especially under pressure. A well-meaning ally could make a critical error at the wrong moment. A small hesitation, a misjudged reaction, or an emotional impulse could throw a plan off course entirely. And then there were those who wore the mask of friendship, who exploited the trust Michael so meticulously extended. Betrayal often came not from brute force, but from subtle manipulation, deception, and hidden agendas. Michael's mind could predict patterns, anticipate routines, and calculate probabilities, but it could not fully account for deceit cloaked in familiarity. Michael's reliance on logic in predicting human behavior occasionally became a weakness. He expected rationality, morality, or loyalty to guide actions, assuming that people would act in predictable, controllable ways. But humans are inherently flawed and unpredictable, driven as much by emotion, fear, and self-interest as by reason. When reality diverged from his expectations, Michael was forced to improvise, to react in real time, often under extreme pressure. These improvisations, though remarkable, carried risks. sometimes jeopardizing the very plans he had spent days, even weeks, constructing. This recurring vulnerability is a stark reminder that no mind, no matter how brilliant, can fully control another. Trust is always a gamble. Extending it can yield extraordinary results, enabling collaboration and success, but misjudging it can lead to catastrophe. Michael Scofield's occasional miscalculations in trust reveal a subtle but profound truth. Intelligence and strategy alone cannot dictate loyalty or human emotion. And yet, it is precisely this human element, the unpredictability, the emotional depth, the capacity for error, that makes his story compelling. Each misstep, each betrayal, each moment of misplaced trust forced Michael to adapt, to reassess, and to evolve. His genius was not diminished by these failures. It was tested, challenged, and ultimately refined. But make no mistake, trusting the wrong person, even once, could turn the most perfect plan into a chaotic struggle for survival. And Michael's experiences remind us that even a mastermind is never invulnerable when dealing with the human heart. Perhaps the most dangerous flaw in Michael Scofield's genius was something that seems almost paradoxical: overcomplication. His mind thrived on complexity, on designing plans so intricate and layered that they resembled masterpieces. Every step, every contingency, every diversion was calculated with precision that bordered on obsession. On paper, these plans were flawless. In practice, however, the more Michael layered the details, the more fragile the whole system became. Every backup route, every hidden passage, every timed distraction added another layer of risk. A single overlooked variable, a mechanical failure, a miscommunication, a delayed reaction, or even a sudden human panic could set off a chain reaction, unraveling hours or days of meticulous work. Sometimes the very complexity that made his strategies brilliant also made them vulnerable. Consider how even small deviations could cascade into near disasters. A guard's unexpected shift in position, a minor error by an ally, or an unpredictable environmental factor could force Michael to improvise on the fly. And while he was unmatched at improvisation, these moments of adaptation carried immense risk, because they occurred in real time under intense pressure. What was elegant in theory became perilous in reality. This is the paradox of genius. Striving for absolute control can introduce fragility. In attempting to anticipate every eventuality, Michael created a network of moving pieces so delicate that a single misstep could collapse the entire system. His plans became like a house of cards, beautiful, ingenious, and terrifyingly precarious. Michael's obsession with perfection also sometimes slowed action. Moments that demanded decisiveness could be lost to hesitation, as he recalculated contingencies, checked and rechecked variables, and attempted to account for the near-infinite possibilities. While these delays were meant to ensure success, they occasionally increased exposure, drawing attention where none was desired and forcing improvisation under less than ideal circumstances. Yet, it is precisely this relentless pursuit of perfection that defines Michael Scofield. His overcomplicated plans, though risky, showcased a mind capable of seeing patterns, probabilities, and connections that no one else could. They were both a liability and a testament to his brilliance, a constant reminder that even genius has limits, and that the line between mastery and overreach is razor-thin. In the end, Michael's overcomplicated designs reveal a truth about the nature of intelligence. The greater the vision, the higher the stakes. A mind capable of planning the impossible must also contend with the imperfections of reality. And for Michael Scofield, navigating that delicate balance was both his greatest strength and his most dangerous vulnerability. Even the most calculating mind is not immune to emotion, and Michael Scofield's genius was no exception. For all his meticulous planning, his precise calculations, and his uncanny ability to predict human behavior, there existed a part of him that could not, or would not, ignore the human heart. His love for his brother Lincoln, the deep connection he shared with Sarah Tancredi, and his moral convictions often guided his choices in ways that logic alone could not. These emotions, while noble, sometimes collided with strategy. There were countless moments when Michael deviated from meticulously crafted plans to save a life, protect an ally, or act on instinct. Perhaps it was a split-second decision to pull someone from danger, a hesitation to harm someone unnecessarily, or a moral line he refused to cross. While these choices reflected his humanity, they often came at a cost. Timing was compromised, carefully orchestrated contingencies unraveled, and enemies were given openings they could exploit. Even the smallest emotional impulse could ripple outwards, creating consequences far beyond the immediate moment. Michael's brilliance lay in his ability to improvise, but improvisation under emotional strain carries immense risk. The enemy could sense hesitation, detect deviations, and respond in ways that threatened the integrity of his plans. A single misstep, born not from miscalculation but from care, could jeopardize an entire operation. In this way, his emotional intelligence, a quality that made him relatable, empathetic, and capable of extraordinary acts of loyalty, also became a double-edged sword, leaving him vulnerable when perfection demanded detachment. This tension between strategy and emotion is what makes Michael Scofield such a compelling character. He is not a machine executing flawless logic. He is a human being navigating extraordinary circumstances. His mistakes remind us that even the most brilliant minds cannot divorce themselves entirely from the human heart. Emotions may inspire acts of courage, loyalty, and compassion, but they can also cloud judgment, introduce unpredictability, and create opportunities for failure. Ultimately, Michael's struggles with emotion revealed the paradox of genius. It is a mind capable of seeing countless steps ahead, yet it is still tethered to the vulnerabilities that define humanity. His story shows us that brilliance is not simply measured by flawless execution or perfect foresight. It is also measured by the courage to act, even when the stakes are immeasurably high, and even when the heart demands a choice that logic cannot fully justify. These moments, where intellect meets emotion, are not failures alone. They are the defining human elements that make Michael Scofield's genius both extraordinary and profoundly relatable. Finally, we come to what may be the most profound source of Michael Scofield's mistakes: hubris. His confidence, that rare and dazzling quality that allowed him to envision the impossible, sometimes bordered on arrogance. It was the audacity to believe he could outthink everyone, control every variable, and manipulate chaos itself. And while this same audacity fueled some of his greatest triumphs, Fox River, Sanaa, countless flawless maneuvers, it also blinded him in ways that were subtle, yet profoundly dangerous. Hubris crept into his plans quietly, wrapped in certainty. He misjudged guards' attentiveness, assumed rivals would act predictably, and overestimated his own ability to foresee every eventuality. The very brilliance that allowed him to anticipate nearly everything became a double-edged sword, leading him to take risks that even the most cautious strategist would hesitate to attempt. A single miscalculation, born not from lack of intelligence, but from overconfidence, could, and sometimes did, threaten not only his freedom, but the lives of those he cared about most. What makes these moments fascinating is that they are not the result of incompetence. Michael's mistakes are not failures of skill, but of perspective. They emerge when a genius mind, accustomed to controlling every detail, underestimates the unpredictable nature of people, environments, and circumstances. These are the moments when intellect meets human fallibility, when strategy collides with overconfidence, and when the line between triumph and catastrophe becomes razor-thin. Turitan, consider how hubris influenced his interactions with enemies. Overestimating his ability to manipulate someone or believing that he alone could steer a situation to success sometimes exposed him to danger. These miscalculations were compounded when combined with his relentless pursuit of perfection and his deep emotional attachments. His genius, in these instances, became a risk factor rather than a safeguard. Michael Scofield's mistakes teach a profound lesson. Brilliance without humility can be perilous. Even the most intelligent, resourceful, and disciplined mind is not immune to human error. Hubris, subtle as it may be, can turn careful planning into vulnerability and triumph into near tragedy. It is in these moments of overconfidence that we see the full complexity of his character. Courageous, yet flawed. Calculating, yet human. Brilliant, yet fallible. And yet, these mistakes do not diminish Michael's legend. They enrich it. They reveal a man who was daring enough to challenge impossibilities, brilliant enough to succeed against insurmountable odds, and human enough to make mistakes that teach as much as his victories. His story captivates because it is not just about flawless execution. It is about the tension between genius and hubris, ambition and humility, intellect and vulnerability. Michael Scofield remains unforgettable not because he was perfect, but because he was a man whose brilliance inspired awe, whose hubris humbled him, and whose journey continues to fascinate, inspire, and caution us all. In understanding his mistakes, we do not simply see failure. We see the human dimension of genius, a reminder that even the brightest minds are not immune to the shadows cast by their own confidence.